They make the trek out to Burning Man for a week and a day. After a lot of work, oh, there's a lot of play. Party, 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 drama, 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 bitch, bitch, bitch. Year after year, they come back to scratch that itch. They all say their lives have been changed. After many years, lives have been rearranged. That change is what this show is all about. You'll see the impact of Burning Man up and out. So sit back, relax, and cancel all your plans. These are the stories about the shadow of the man.
Hello, and welcome to the Shadow of the Man Show. I'm your host, Andy. Ooh, yeah, that Andy. Today, our guest is Patrice Mackey, otherwise known as Chef Juke. Welcome.
That's good to be here.
Yeah. So I decided to change up my format a little bit. Like in the past, like what I would do is I would ask each guest to do like a quick, like 30-second introduction and then go into their past history and then go into their Burning Man experience and then talk about, how Burning Man has changed them. But, a quick 20, 30-second, like, elevator pitch of their experience usually turns into like 20 minutes. So I'm like, how about we just start, let's start with the Burning Man experience. So, so when did you first hit the playa and and why?
I first hit the playa in 1994. I had recently moved up to Eugene, Oregon, and I had been here for a year and started a new job at a software company. Imagine that, somebody going to Burning Man who's been involved with tech.
Fancy that.
And had just had a lot of life changes, and a friend at work posted a message about come learn about the Burning Man, and had an afternoon gathering, and a number of us came and watched kind of a slideshow. And I said, oh, that's going to be in Labor Day weekend. I'm free and I'd kind of like to do something cathartic. I've had all these changes, but I'd love to, I've never been desert camping.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds really interesting. And I remembered that I had read a short little blurb about Burning Man. I think it was in Outside magazine in 1992. And again, 100 people went to the desert and gathered. And so I said,
wow,
sure, I'm up for some adventure. And that's what got me to the playa for the first time.
So you went with some friends or
Yes, it was actually a harbinger of what was to come. It was a classic Burning Man experience. We had this great plan that I think 9 of us, all from my work, all colleagues, we were going to all drive together. We're going to caravan from Eugene, Oregon, out to Gerlach, out to Nevada together. And in the last 4 days, it all fell apart. Nobody ended up caravanning. And I ended up spending, I think I had gotten like 4 hours sleep in the day and a half before I left. And so we left a day late and way later than we should, drove all night and got to the playa at 4 a.m. On Friday. And one of the things that I tell younger participants or more recent participants, when we arrived, it was 4 a.m. on Friday. The man was going to burn that Sunday.
Yep.
And there were maybe 20 cars on the playa. There were that few people.
Wow.
And in fact, I know the folks in the audio can't hear, but the picture behind me on my Zoom, that is me. That's a self-portrait I took about an hour and a half after I hit the playa for the first time. And it's just my silhouette looking at the man standing on the ground.
Yeah. For all you youngsters today, the man was on the ground. No decomposed granite, no
no base, not anyway. So so we drove all night and got there 4 a.m. There was hardly anybody there. When we pulled off the road, there was a single guy sitting out next to a teardrop trailer with a little Coleman lantern.
Yeah.
And he looked at us. We pulled up to him and he said, "Burning Man?" We said, "Yes." Got tickets? Yes. Okay.
Eh.
You see that car, and there had been another car ahead of us. Follow that car. You're going to go 11 miles straight and then turn right and go 2 miles. If you hit water or a mining camp, you've gone too far. And that was it.
Wow. Did
He
you
just
bring a
drove.
compass?
He asked, "Do you have a compass?" Like, no. And he said, "Well, yeah, just try and go straight." And pretty quick, we realized
Yeah.
I'm driving like 40 miles an hour to start. Pretty soon, I'm driving 60 miles an hour and cannot see anything but the two taillights way ahead of me.
Uh-huh.
And then they disappear because the dust from the car ahead of us, they were about a quarter, maybe half a mile ahead. And I realized I'm just driving pretty blind across this dark desert, and I can't see much beyond my headlights.
Wow.
Um, Pretty soon, I saw this little blue light on the horizon, and I thought it was maybe another Coleman lantern or something. So I said, "Well, I'm just going to aim for that." And as we got closer and closer, it started growing, getting taller, and finally realized, hey, that's the Burning Man. So we aimed for
Mm.
that, and then we were there, and I have to say, I don't know if I was hooked in that first 30 minutes, but we got there and I looked around and it was just so strange. Here in the middle of the literal middle of nowhere, there was this 40-foot tall statue. There's nobody around, nobody up. 4:15 in the morning. And there's this blue neon. The only sound is the generator generating the power for the neon lights. And it was just such an out of this world experience. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. I can't wait to see what happens.
Well, it's a nice kind of easing into it, right? Like you get there, most everyone's asleep, and you're just like, oh, okay. Because I remember in the Playa Pete, in his story, like him and his wife get there, and it's just like people driving around, it's all crazy, and he was just like, I don't know what we came to, like, and then there's like, well, we're just gonna camp like far away, and then the morning we'll, like we'll pack up and go somewhere else. But then like I guess the morning came and he walked around and he was like, huh. This is a little different than I thought. Like, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it is definitely, you can talk to people like myself who've been introduced to Burning Man in Black Rock City at different periods, and
Hmm.
you'll get a lot of different, I'm sure you have, a lot of different experiences. Nowadays, people, they come to Burning Man, and every year I know people who have come for the first time, and I get to watch them like, their jaw drop. And Burning Man, I think the more modern Burning Man experience is akin to getting hit over the head with a baseball bat. You come and it's so big and it's so overwhelming. And for me, I was participating for years in a much at maybe a lower volume, and so, when I talked to people who said, wow, I went to Burning Man and man, it changed my life. And boom, it was like a bolt of lightning. And I feel like my experience was much more like the frog in the pot of water, um, where, it's slowly getting hotter and hotter. I went to Burning Man and went, wow, that was fascinating. And I talked about it a bit, but it wasn't like getting the bolt from the blue. It was like, interesting. So I went back and it was even more. It still was interesting, and it was interesting, but the change happened for me like in a slower way over time, rather than getting just hit with the in a flash moment, life-changing moment, that a lot of other people experience.
Well, who did you camp with? Like, so what was your early couple of
Ah,
years experience there? Yeah.
so the colleague at work friend, Steve Wolf, also known as the digital. At the time, his nickname became the Digital Navigator, and now he goes by Miffy, because he was always kind of miffed. He was the one who drove with me to that first burn, and he had a friend, Alex, and she was the press liaison for Burning Man that year.
Oh.
So we drove there. It's 4 in the morning. We are exhausted. So we just threw up our tents and just went to sleep. And like we'll find Alex in the morning. Woke up and because my tent was 110 degrees, uh, and I opened up my tent flap, looked out, and driving by my tent was a a boat, like a little cabin cruiser, like it was a Lincoln Continental with a boat on it,
Huh.
being chased by a shark, a silver shark,
Mm-hmm.
which I later found out was Ripper the shark car.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, these were the first art cars I ever saw in the playa, being chased by a strange little VW bug with a whole bunch of stuff stuck to it, which I later learned was Harold Blank's famous art car, Oh My God. And they just drove by. And that was like my first morning waking up at Burning Man. And that boy, I am sure not in Kansas anymore moment. And then we found Alex. We moved our tents over there and we got to sit or stay in this little like pop-up shade structure, which was the press tent. It literally was one of those
10 by 10 pop-ups.
10 by 10 pop-ups. No,
Wow.
and I'm not kidding. I mean, this is what Media Mecca was back then. It was this 10 by 10 pop-up. It had a little sign and a little picket fence, like a little tiny picket fence, and a sign that said, the Fourth Estate Press Tent. And all day long, journalists would come and meet with Alex, and she had come up with a little oath that she made all of the press take. And they'd had some issues a year or two before with an HBO crew that had come out to film, and they came out and apparently were acting very entitled. And they were like, they would tell people like, get out of the way, you're in our shot. We're trying to get a shot, and that wasn't met with a lot of kindness from the snarky burners of the time.
Oh, I
And
imagine.
they got so this group started chanting negative things at them so much that they got scared and drove off to leave, went the wrong way and got stuck out on the playa,
Oh.
and Danger Ranger had to go save them. But anyway, this oath that the press liaison had journalists take was, I promise not no I, yeah, I promise not to interfere with anyone's immediate experience, and basically told them, look, you're here, ideally you're going to participate, but you don't get to tell people to move out of your shot, you don't get any special privileges, you can come and capture this, but on these terms. And and it was great, and we woke up, had coffee, got settled, and about 3 hours later, Larry came over to do some interviews. So Larry Harvey shows up, and I meet Larry. Okay, here's this guy, and sat, and 4 hours onto the playa, I'm listening to Larry being interviewed by two, as I recall, Japanese journalists talking about Burning Man. And so, a bunch of us are sitting there listening, and it was really interesting. It was interesting
Well, okay,
because
like at this point, like how, like 1994, like how big is Burning Man? Like you said, there were 20 cars. I mean, like with this, it seems like a good number of media showing up for,
oh, it
I mean,
was
how many
so
people?
so all day long. So this is Friday morning.
Uh,
All day long, people showed up. So I think the official number was maybe 1,500 for
okay.
that year, but it had gotten enough that there were press there and that they needed to have a press tent. Um, uh, you know, so I don't, I can't tell you what the official number. It also swelled the night of the burn because all the locals could come for
Hmm.
free and just showed up. And I've got some really interesting photographs from them of, some very, rural Gerlach folks coming
Local
in.
boys and their lifted trucks.
Oh, well, I have one photograph of what looks to be a family, uh, with, some cowboy hats and boots and Budweiser tall boys, walking around looking at all the strange folks. Uh, um, but it had gotten some press, uh, but it wasn't anything like now. But people were interested of what are these people going out into the middle of the desert and doing?
Well, that's just interesting because like so early on, even when it was so small,
Yeah. And Larry. what I remember, the biggest thing that I remember Larry talking about at that time, um, he at the time there was a Club Med advertising slogan saying that Club Med was the antidote to civilization. And
Mm.
Larry mentioned that and he said, Burning Man, we come out here, we build this little city, and we build this great sculpture, this great piece of art, and then we appreciate it. We sit here and we celebrate this thing we built, and then we set it on fire and let it go. And out in the real world, out in he didn't I don't think he called it the default world, but he said out in the real world, we we have this thing where we fool ourselves into believing that all of the things in our world are permanent, and they're not. And our our homes, our jobs, our relationships, these things are a lot more transitory than we like to think. And sometimes that means we take them for granted. And here, this is a little bit of, I think of Burning Man as a monument to impermanence. You know, it's great. It's here for the moment. We celebrate it, but we know its whole purpose is it's going to go away. And hopefully, what people take away from this is that celebrating the things we have in our world, the people, the great things that we have in our life. So really celebrate them. And I took it as a bit of an update on Ram Dass's "Be Here Now." Be here in the moment,
Hmm.
and that I think is what translated into the immediacy principle.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, and so that was the thing that stuck with me, right after that first burn was listening to Larry talk about, you
Huh.
know, a monument to impermanence. Let's make sure to celebrate the things that we appreciate in the world.
It's also another interesting thing I just thought of. Uh, like the difference between like things like and an experience, because like a lot of people think like I'll be happy when, like when I have this or when I have
Yeah,
X amount of dollars or when I have that e-bike or whatever, and then you get it and then you're like, well, then what's more than more and more? It's like, I mean, I think the happiest person is a person who's just happy with like what they have. I mean, that's kind of a separate thing, but then like, I don't know, just the experience versus the thing. Like, it seems kind of more like what Larry was talking about. It's more of like the experience,
yeah,
and so like the thing can help you like get to that experience, but then at the end you're just like, yeah, then you light the thing on fire, and then what you have left is the memory, is the experience.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's really one of the challenging things. I mean, for me, for years, I started joking as Burning Man kept happening because in the early days, it never felt really certain that there'd be one next year. Especially there were a few years where it was really questionable whether it would be there next year.
96. Yeah,
Yeah, oh yeah, and 96 and then 97. I mean,
yeah.
uh, and when it did seem to be sort of sort of get into the groove of permanence, I thought it was fairly ironic that this thing that my introduction to it was this is a monument to impermanence. And again, the irony is in that statement,
Yeah. Hmm.
um, was sort of again ironic. Oh, there's this celebration of impermanence that has somehow become sort of permanent. Ooh, huh. How do you process that?
Yeah, yeah. Another question, because I was actually talking to Coyote about this. He didn't really have an answer because I think his first year was 96, right?
Yes.
So when you were there in 94, how many large scale sound camps were there?
Oh, oh, there were no large scale sound
Even
camps.
small scale.
No, what there was, and I actually have some video of visiting this in 95, but there was Rave Camp.
Uh-huh.
And Rave Camp was about 2 miles
Yeah.
from the main city. So you literally had to, and at that time there was no limit on driving, so people would drive all over.
Yeah.
You would literally get in your car and drive 2 miles, and there would be a stack of speakers, and you would that was where the rave happened.
Was that in
Um,
94 or like when was the
uh,
first time you
I
experienced that?
I experienced it in 95, but I think it might have been there in 94. But I know it was there in 95 because we have a pretty funny video of us going and pranking the folks there.
Well, because it's funny because like some people like to think it was like, oh, Burning Man's a music festival like Coachella or whatever. It's just like, well,
Wait,
actually, it's like
well,
it wasn't quite the rave scene wasn't quite there at the beginning, right? I mean,
no,
Larry didn't
no.
show up at Baker Beach with like turntables, like.
Yeah, I actually from hearing him tell it, from all the folks telling it, no, it was much more of a hootenanny with some guitars and a little more San Francisco hippified than what you see now.
So when do you think that the music or the like the rave scene kind of showed up? I mean, well, you
Well,
first experienced it in '95, but I mean, what would be your guess?
well, the thing is, it was much more small scale. I mean, I think a big turning point, honestly, was in the late aughts, as we call them. You did start seeing more people bringing bigger camps, and with those bigger camps, you started getting bigger sound systems.
Hmm.
But a big turning point was I think it was 2011, the year that tickets first sold out.
Yep.
Now, what preceded it, as I recall, um, was some folks in the EDM world sort of announced that they would be at Burning Man. And the way a friend described it was, and all over Europe, I think it was one or two DJs, said, "Oh, and we'll be in August. We'll be at Burning Man." And simultaneously, across the European EDM landscape, thousands of heads turned towards America and said, "Burning Man, what's that?" And
Uh,
then went and bought tickets. And so that sort of was a part of the like a big bump, a big jump forward in folks coming out with the intention of coming to a more music focused event.
that's kind of interesting. It's just like once the tickets kind of sold out for the first time, then all of a sudden it's like it's become this hot ticket commodity item, to get a ticket to Burning Man. I mean,
Well, no, I think it was a little more that the tickets sold out because a whole bunch of people from this other sort of large group of folks who are into that particular thing found out that there was some of that here, and it
uh,
was an interesting place, and so that was part of what prompted the tickets selling out. Now,
uh.
again, this is my aging burner memory, but I remember at the time that was part and parcel of what seemed to be going on at the time was a whole bunch of folks started coming because these announcements of, oh, we'll be playing here, and they thought it was and I think many of them thought it was a festival. They may have thought it was a music festival,
Hmm.
and that sort of put the music aspect into a higher gear.
Mm. So yeah, so you go 94, you're there 95, 96. Like, so are you part of a theme camp or are you like you volunteering in early
So
days or?
the first 3 years, I went with just a handful of friends.
Hmm.
96, I went with I think about 8 friends from Eugene and some of the original people. Brought them out. We all went, had a great time. And right after the 96 event, I joined the then Burning Man email list. Long before, the current flavors of social media, people communicated by email lists.
Uh-huh.
And I found out immediately that 2 weeks after the event, there was some folks were having parties in San Francisco. There was the precursor, the Anon Salon precursor
Oh yeah.
to decompression. There was a party at a club space in San Francisco.
Is that cell space?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, that
yeah,
was
something
it.
like that.
And
Yeah.
and uh, and so and then there was another party that somebody on a fellow named Gus Alcantar. There was a party he was holding at his house, and he invited everybody on the list to come. And so me and my friend Steve Wolf decided we would take a road trip down to San Francisco. My mom lives in the Bay Area, so we went to and stayed with my mom. And we went to 3 Burning Man parties in 3 nights and then drove back. But the key there was the second party sorry, the first party we went to at this guy's house was just this great party. We met. Larry was there. Marion was there. They were dating at the time. Uh, and there was this whole group of people who I had only sort of seen on this email list, and we all connected. And that was this catalyst for bringing this email list into sort of real life meet space. And that really prompted more and more discussion about Burning Man on the system. What do we want to do? And then what happened was the folks started talking about more what the next party was going to be and the next event was going to be in San Francisco. And some folks who were not in the San Francisco Bay Area started saying, wait, I thought this was a list about Burning Man, not about San Francisco parties. And so the head of the list said, well, okay, we're going to create a new list. Who wants to join? And I joined that new list. And that list became the catalyst for what became the first village at Burning Man, the Blue Light District.
Blue light, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So that little list became a sort of subset of the Burning Man list, and we started talking more and more about Burning Man. And after '96, there was a lot of discussion because all of a sudden Burning Man was getting larger, like significantly larger. And for the first time, it started to feel less intimate, and it started to feel like there were more folks who were coming for different reasons than we had come for. And that was the year we started talking about how many Yahoos were there. Um, there was, as one person put it, a lot of frat boy types. I'm just quoting, who were leaving their beer cans everywhere and shouting, "Show us your breasts."
Body parts,
To
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. This is
and
an explicit podcast. You can say whatever you
right,
want. Yeah.
they were saying, "Show us your tits," and there was like people were definitely feeling an influx of a different vibe than
Hmm.
we had had the previous years. Now, also, '96 was a year after a lot more Burning Man press had come out. I think the Wired book had come out,
Yeah.
I believe. Anyway, and so it had doubled in size, and people were going, "It's not feeling as intimate. What can we do?" And what if we created little villages within the bigger city, and each of those little villages will be about the size of what Burning Man was 2 years ago in '94. And I remember my first comment on that was, no, 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 we shouldn't do that. But over the year, I was convinced otherwise. And so we organized into, let's do a village. We'll have this combination of little theme camps. And we did that in '97. So '97 was the Wallapai year.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And so we planned out, and we'd have all these little things. So we had a bar across the street. My little camp, we had a friend created a Balinese puppet show, like,
Oh,
shadow puppet show. We did that. And we had a blast. We had a great time. And the next year this became, and still is, my community. This became my Burning Man community, the Blue Light District. I've been friends with these folks, going back to '96, from starting on this email list. But that's how, you know I got deeper involved. Burning Man got its hooks in me through this community.
oh, cool. Well, okay, two things. I know we talked about it offline, but just for the folks listening at home, it's like, how did you get your playa name? And then we'll talk about the art cart thing after that.
Okay, well, that leads right into this. So one of the things we did when we created this village was a woman named Rochelle set up, we were going to have a communal kitchen. And I brought a shade structure that I borrowed from friends. And I said, I had studied culinary arts in my earlier life, and I was more than happy to help cook. And so we got people to sign up to help cook, and a bunch of people would bring food. Some would bring eggs or bring whatever, sausages or whatever. We were going to cook brunch every day. And so we got the kitchen set up, and I showed up. And again, I'd been in culinary school. I actually had, a chef's coat, and a chef's hat, a toque, and an apron. And so I show up to volunteer. I'm just going to help. I'm not organizing or doing anything. And as happens at Burning Man, sometimes people have, those Burning Man moments when everything goes sideways and they just have to go in their tent and be away from everything for a while.
Hmm.
Well, Rochelle, the organizer, had that moment. She's like, I'm having a crisis right now. I can't deal with this. And then went and hid in her tent for a day.
A day. Wow.
Oh, yeah. I think it was like a day and a half.
That's a
So now
crisis. Yeah.
this happens like right after I show up. It's like, I don't know, 10 in the morning. I show up in my crisp, my momentarily crisp white, chef's coat, chef's hat. And I'm standing in this kitchen, and all of a sudden people start showing up going, oh, here's my 3 dozen eggs that I have for the kitchen. Where should I put them? And I looked at them and said, all right, let me figure this out. And then somebody else came out, I've got 3 rafters of bacon. Where should I put them? And the next thing I know, I've taken over running the kitchen. At the same time, people who hadn't met me, because again, most of our communication for the playa had been via email, are showing up. They're seeing me. And you have to realize that this is 1997. One of the biggest cultural things that had come on the cultural landscape was South Park. So people literally walk up and go, hey, it's Chef from South Park. I'm
Say
like,
what?
say what? and and now so that's where the chef part came from. So basically, but I have to start with Juke, and really I should have that first year that I showed up at Burning Man. One of my I used to be a pretty strong in music trivia. My dad had a huge collection of albums. He had over 10,000 albums in our apartment in New York. Yes, my dad was an audiophile. I was huge audiophile when it came to pop music.
Mm.
So when I was younger and when albums, kids, you remember albums? They're 12 inches. Anyway, anytime I bought music, I would read the liner notes. And for whatever reason, the information in that stuff stuck. So I was pretty good that I could name, if you wanted to know about any song, any pop song from 1955 to 85, I probably could tell you who sang it, about what year it came out, and probably sing it. So that first year at Burning Man, hanging out with Alex and her friends, and she mentioned a song, but I think she said, "Lean on Me" by Al Green. And I went, no, 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 no. Lean on Me was by Bill Withers. And she says, are you sure? And I say, oh, yes. It
Let's
was from
check
his,
Google. Oh no,
yeah,
we can't do that right now.
exactly. This is long before, which really has taken away one of my best, party tricks was being able to do this because now
Yeah.
you can hum it into your phone. But I said, no, 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 no. That was by Bill Withers. It was off his second album. But you may be confused because it came out the same year that Al Green had his biggest hit, Let's Stay Together, 1974, blah, blah. And like, are you sure? And then I literally started singing the song. And that led to, well, then who sang? And they named another song. And I told them, and I started singing it. So pretty quick, it's like, well, can you sing this? And it became kind of a name that tune thing. But at one point, she says, gosh, you were like this human jukebox. Okay, put a pin on that. It's 2 years later. Alex is coming back to Burning Man. She hadn't been in 95. And she says, oh, you've got to meet my friend Lisa. She'll be camping with us this year. She also likes, oldies and likes this music. And when I showed up in the playa, I went and looked for their camp. I found their camp. And there's a woman I don't recognize sunbathing. And I said, hi, is this Alex's camp? And she looks up at me and she said, well, yes. And she looked and said, wait a minute, you're that Juke guy. And I said, I'm
What?
sorry, what? The jukebox guy. Huh? Oh, yo, yeah, and it's like, yeah, because it had stuck in her head that I was the human jukebox.
Ah.
Well, that became an in joke with us. So all event long, I kept saying, just call me that juke guy. Yeah, that juke guy. So back as I mentioned that when I joined the Burning Man email list, I noted that everybody had these nicknames. So I started signing my emails and put a sig line of that juke guy, which became Juke. So people started referring to me as Juke. And then in 97, when I showed up in the chef's outfit, people started calling me chef. And that's how I became Chef Juke. So that's how it stuck.
Wow,
So
that's
that,
awesome.
that was the long disjointed version of that story. But
Well, it just shows you like what happens when you show up in a uniform. People are just like,
yeah,
well, you're the
yep,
official. I guess
right.
we'll be following you.
And at Christmas it becomes Santa Juke, and I don't know if any other major, if I become an engineer, I don't know,
I wonder
but
if it was at one point that like, the fascination became, just like let's stump the juke, just like, okay, we got to find, something that you don't know. And we're going to keep playing this game until you like,
oh
you
no,
say,
no,
oh,
that
I don't know.
I have been through that many times, and it's not that I'm perfect. And as my brain has aged, I'm not as good as good as it as I used to be.
Hmm.
But but
So
it's
then,
a
yeah. So then, how did you get into the mutant vehicle or art car business?
well. So for the next 3 years, 97, 98, and 99, I ran the communal kitchen for the Blue Light District. And one of the folks who had joined our little community was a woman named Jules Cody.
Hmm.
And Jules was from Texas and had come out to San Francisco for some reason, ended up coming to Burning Man, and man, did it stick. She got very involved. And after 96, uh, and as folks don't know, there was a lot of stuff happened in 96, and there was some injuries related to, and we had in 95 and 96, there were injuries related to vehicles driving on the playa. And it was decided for the 97, in 97, they decided, look, we've got to be do some things about safety. It's too much of a free for all. The organizers are like, we don't want to be responsible for somebody getting hurt. Even though we say safety third, there's some limits to that. Um, and they started restricting driving, and especially on the Wallapai, where it was a smaller event and there was a lot more concern. But there had already been this history of people bringing their art cars to the event, and they wanted to keep that going. And so they created the Department of Mutant Vehicles to give people a license to be able to bring their vehicles or to drive at the event if they had some kind of art car. And Jules ended up volunteering to run that. So Jules started running the DMV. And in 2002, she was putting out the call amongst friends, um, and for she needed more help with the DMV because more people were wanting to bring their vehicles. And I raised my hand and said, "Sure, love to help." As I said, my very first morning at Burning Man was when I saw my first mutant vehicles, and they
Yeah.
definitely left a mark. Um, and so I started volunteering, and over the next few years was just one of the rank and file. Um, and at one point I started getting a little more involved. Now my tech background is in tech support, so doing support for folks. And as the DMV started growing, there's a point where they were getting more applications to bring vehicles than they could invite. And so that meant they had to start sending a lot. They could only invite so many, and they started having to up the criteria for what could be invited. So a car with an interesting paint job alone really wouldn't pass muster, you know. So that's when we really moved from art car, as we saw call it, to mutant vehicle. And the only difference is a mutant vehicle is a type of art car. It's just more modified. It's something that really doesn't look like a street vehicle. It's not a hot rod, it's not a custom car. It's something far more dramatically changed. Along with that meant that we had to not invite a number of vehicles. And that means you have to send them a note saying, hey, thanks for applying, but unfortunately, for these reasons, it's not being invited. The fellow who was responsible for writing those messages was definitely an old school burner, and old school in the term of had a tendency to be pretty snarky.
Mm.
And there were points where I was seeing these messages going out and going,
Not good customer service.
yeah, yeah, we're saying no, but we could be kindler and gentler about it. So he went on vacation for a week, and I took over that role and never relinquished it. Um, and honestly, since 2007, I have written basically every, we call them non-invited letters, but every rejection letter for the DMV, because I was really wanting to make sure that people understood that even though their vehicle wasn't invited, it didn't mean that we didn't appreciate the time, effort, and love that they were putting into their work. We have this limit. We really can't invite everybody who wants to come. We have to choose. And here's why, try to give them a concrete reason and understanding why, but, not have it be or feel like, your vehicle sucks. I mean, that's definitely not what we want to.
So more than a postcard that just says no.
Yeah, exactly. Or as some of them were, some of the messages before, I really got to say, it was like, why did you think that this would?
God.
No. And so
And
over
what if
that,
somebody showed up like with an art car that either you didn't know about or wasn't approved? I mean, they're just like, well, I showed up anyway.
well, so for the most part, you can bring any, if you're driving it in yourself, you can bring any vehicle and have it parked at your camp.
Hmm.
You just can't drive it unless it's licensed. And this is one of those idiosyncrasies about Burning Man. And I know there's lots of different talk about Burning Man and the organization these days, but
Eh.
there's um, because of its size and because of how it's grown and how it's evolved, there's a necessary level of bureaucracy that has to happen. And for the DMV, we try to be the least bureaucratic we can be while still doing the job that we have to do. And because we talk amongst ourselves and we keep reminding ourselves the last thing we want to become is like the real world, the default world DMV. We don't want to be, yes, we sometimes have lines that people have to wait in, but we don't want to be that. Um,
You don't want to have
uh,
like the plexiglass window or the people
uh,
take a number and be like, our next 54, step forward.
Yeah, no, not at all. And but to your point, you can't bring an extra vehicle of any type. You can't bring an extra vehicle into the event without an invite letter from the DMV, saying, hey, if you come with a vehicle on a trailer, you if you don't have an invite from the DMV, unfortunately, your vehicle and trailer will probably have to sit in the D lot next to gate for the event. Um, and again, that is part of the bureaucracy. But um, you know, I mentioned earlier, we've had uh, we've had a number of deaths related to safety, issues, and some related to mutant vehicles over the years.
Yeah.
And when I meet with mutant vehicle owners, especially new ones, we talk about the people. We explain that we have this list. There is this list. It's a very small list, and we don't want that list to ever grow. And for our part, that's us talking to mutant vehicle owners about safety, about making sure that they really understand the responsibility if you're driving, especially the larger vehicles, out in a yes, it's the desert. Yes, there's a lot of space, but there's also 70, 80,000 people, not all of whom are particularly sober all the time. and at night, etc. It is a big responsibility. So we try and make sure people understand that. But it's also why we can't have just everybody driving whatever vehicle they want to bring.
And do you have like different kind of classifications of mutant vehicles? Like, okay, they have like the big like sound barges, that are towed by like a military truck. Then you have like a car, that's kind of chopped up. And then you have like all the way down to like maybe like a golf cart chassis, or all the way down to something like pretty small. I remember one year I've always wanted to make me and my brother always wanted to make a like a lazy boy chair like
Uh-huh.
on tank treads.
So the
Never got around
short
to that.
So while there are different vehicles with different aspects, and I also will let you know
Uh-huh.
that particular vehicle in the military truck, that was a that vehicle broke down. The vehicle couldn't
Oh.
drive, and that's why it had that we allowed it that time to have that. Normally, that vehicle would with the tow vehicle wouldn't have been licensed by the DMV.
Hmm.
So we don't we don't have those kind of classifications. I mean, we do sort of we can tell how big a vehicle is, etc.
Hmm.
Um, but generally, it's all about the level of mutation. We have a criteria that's set up. We have it up on our website. But basically, the key is it shouldn't look like a street or stock vehicle. Um, it should be modified to the point where it doesn't look like a street or stock vehicle. We don't, we try really hard not to, judge artistic aesthetic. Hey, as long as it's not something that somebody goes, it's a Chevy. Um, and we will accept vehicles that are outside of their normal contexts. People asked a lot about the 747 that we did invite as a mutant
Oh, was that
vehicle.
a
That
vehicle or was that like an art installation?
it was both. It was both. It did move. It did move on more than one occasion. But we've invited other planes, a plane. It looks like a plane. I think
Okay.
we've had like five different actual planes, most of them smaller, uh, that have come as mutant vehicles over the years. That was just the most noticeable and newsworthy one. Um, and but there's not a separate category for them. Like
Yeah. No, I
we
guess my question is more of like, do you have just like a set number? Like, say, like, okay, we're only letting in like 300 and it could be of whatever type, but like, what if
okay,
you had like 200 that are like smaller, or what if there was
yes,
like 150 that were super large? Would you
not
let in more if there was like, like, well, we have these 400 people that are making like a small, like the cupcakes?
so we are talking right now about some of the large vehicles. There's a little concern around there, but we don't do that by size. We have in the past when we were getting a few hundred more applications than we could invite. We have said to people, hey, if you're making a brand new vehicle, you may not want it to be the same type as you may have seen out there. In other words, there might only be, if we had 500 applications that were all motorboats,
Hmm.
well, we're not likely to want to have, three-quarters of the vehicles that we invite be look the same.
Yeah.
And we do now, when we have a large number of applications, what we will do sometimes, if there's a number that are similar, we'll put them aside till we go through all of the applications and then look at the grouped vehicles, the whole group. Boats is one that comes up often, but boats, couches, things when we're seeing a lot of the same type of thing.
Hmm.
Because we have had years where we've had to say no to vehicles that did meet our criteria
Hmm.
because we have 1,000 applications. We invite, just so you know, we have a limit of invites of 800 vehicles. We invite 800
Wow, that's a
vehicles each
lot.
year,
Yeah.
but that is with the intention, our target is 650 vehicles licensed on Playa. The difference is for the last 15 years, we have had a very steady average that 24% of the vehicles we invite do not show up each year.
Uh,
And part of that is it takes a lot to bring a mutant vehicle out to
yeah,
the
just
desert.
Murphy's Law of
You're
just
right,
things
exactly.
happen, right? Yeah.
Things happen, and that's but for us, it means okay, we rely on that, and that has worked out pretty well. So we invite 800 with the expectation that we'll license 650. Some of those are day and night vehicles, some of those are night only, some of those are day only. So it works out, and the BLM so far is happy with that number. When it gets a little more than that, they get a little worried. Um, but we've had times where we have had to say, there's some that don't meet our criteria out of the gate, so we'll say no to them. But there's some that do, but maybe, how to say, they barely meet that. And so what we'll do is we'll go through all of the applications. We have the system design, so we see everything at least once before we reach our limit. And if we're seeing a lot of one type of vehicle, we'll put them off to the end and then review all of them. And if we're really short and we've got, again, say 30 boats, we might say, all right, at this point, we're only going to be able to invite 15 of them. And then we get to some tough decisions. But so far, the last few years, it hasn't been so much of a problem. Our intention is to, curate as lightly as we can and have a wide variety of vehicles. And we've done that pretty well. We do get some feedback that people think that you have to have $1 million to make a mutant vehicle that the DMV would invite.
Ah,
And the reality is, those very large vehicles, there are very few of them overall. Over 50% of the vehicles we invite are golf cart size or slightly larger.
mhm.
So that's 400 plus vehicles that we invite. Less than 30 are the huge party barges.
Mm-hmm.
30 out of 800 that we invite. But the big ones get the most, they get the most photos, they get the most press, they're the ones that you notice a lot. You
Yeah,
know,
I
and
think some of my favorite ones like was the cupcakes. Like maybe
ooh, mm,
I mean, because I think there was what, like three or four or five of them or something like that. I mean, I'm not sure if like if you were just bringing them on a flatbed, it's like would that count as like four or five art cars, or would you be like, okay, you guys are kind
no,
of count as
I,
one?
one of my, so I'm often asked what's my favorite vehicle.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that's like asking a parent, what's your favorite kid? You know, and part of that's simply because over the last 23 years that I've been doing this and working with mutant vehicle owners and creators and seeing what goes into this, there's so many vehicles that I love all of them. I mean, I really do. But one of my all-time favorites, uh, and I will share this one because I think it's really indicative of, yep, I have seen vehicles that I know cost, well north of $1 million. One of my all-time favorites is one that's been coming for about 12 years, uh, and or maybe 13. And it's based on a golf cart, and it is called Rocket Luna. And you won't, but the intention is it is a rocket ship as drawn by a 6-year-old. And it's so perfect. It is a golf cart with around the golf
Huh.
cart they put a frame of a little rocket ship. Uh, I think it's PVC pipe, and they covered it with fabric that they painted on portholes, and it has a little tail and a little nose cone on it,
Uh-huh.
and it looks exactly like a rocket is drawn by a 6-year-old. I'll send you a picture of it.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is the moment I saw it, I just went, it was one of those things that it was a beautiful, simple work, just this, it was so simple, and it was so basic, but it was so perfect. And I don't know, that is one that I often show to people and saying, look, if you brought this or something like this is about as cheap a mutant vehicle as you could make.
Yeah.
And all it takes is some inspiration and a little sewing, a little painting, and some lights, and you're there. Um,
Yeah. Think more inspiration than big dollar signs, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that's really the thing, for me, the reason Burning Man is still compelling to me after 30 years is every year I go and I see the impact it has on first timers. And I have, I've sort of narrowed, we have the 10 principles. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely want to talk about the whole like awe thing because it's like
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, we'll get into that into a little bit, but
sure, sure, sure. Sorry.
how about we'll switch it up now. It's like let's go back to your background. So like, so where did everything all start with little baby Chef Juke?
Ah, okay. Well, I was born.
Put a
So
chef's hat on.
everything. So I grew up, first part of my growing up, grew up in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
Brooklyn, New York in the 1960s. Um, my dad, black guy from rural Georgia. My mom, Norwegian American,
Norwegian.
from Berkeley, California. Yes, I am an Afro-Wegian. Or as a friend of my folks wrote to them on the occasion of my birth, he will be the African Viking. Um, but so I grew up. My parents were very involved in the civil rights movement in the 1960s.
hmm
I do point out that often when talking about that aspect of my life, when my parents got married in 1962, the year before I was born, it was illegal in 18 states for an interracial couple to get
Oh
married.
yeah. So what year was it? Loving
Yeah, it was
versus
loving 1967.
67. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I had a fascinating upbringing. My parents split when I was 10. And when I was 13, moved to Berkeley, California, where my mom had grown up. So my mom and I are both graduates of Berkeley High School. Go Yellow Jackets! And in school, I did, well, actually, in New York in school, for 2 years, I went to the choir school of St. Thomas Church because I've been involved in singing and then later got involved in drama. So I did drama all through high school and did drama I went to community college for 2 years and studied drama and culinary arts. And when I was done there, I had two directions to go. And I had friends in the drama world who were really struggling. So I said, but there's lots of there's only so many theaters and so many people make it in the theater world, but there's a lot of restaurants.
Well, the two kind of go together,
They
right?
well they do go together. It's people say, there used to be the joke of, what do you do? I'm an actor. Oh, really? What restaurant?
Yeah.
Um, But I then started, my first job actually was in a restaurant. I got a volunteer job at a restaurant and cultural center in Berkeley called La Peña. And so at 14, I became a busboy and a dishwasher and then a waiter when they were shorthanded. And I was a very cute little 14-year-old comes up, can I take your order? Um, but that kind of stuck, and restaurants was my world. I worked in the Berkeley, as they used to call it, gourmet ghetto, at a restaurant called the Fourth Street Grill, and I worked for Alice Waters of Chez
Oh.
Panisse fame at her little cafe, Cafe Fanny,
hmm
and a few other places, and that's what I really did till after moving to up to Eugene.
And so, what years were you living there? Like, went to high school and everything in Berkeley.
Ah,
Was that like
uh,
70s or?
yeah, I graduated class of 81 from Berkeley High School,
Oh, okay.
right? Then went to Contra Costa College, and started working in restaurants. In 88, I was working at an espresso bar in San Francisco called Pasqua that was later bought up by Starbucks.
hmm
But they had a number of kiosks, little places, little espresso bars around town. And they had one I worked at was right outside of the Embarcadero BART station entrance. And noted one of our customers, a young woman, kept coming in every morning at 7:45 for a medium coffee with cream. And found her particularly attractive, so ended up asking her out. There's a
Oh.
long story there that I'm not going to go into, but um, asked her out, and she had found out her name. Oh, Jennifer. Oh, hi, I'm Patrice, and we went from there.
It's just
Uh,
a right on the cup. Yeah,
yeah, she
yeah.
she had lived in Eugene, Oregon for 10 years, and then
Uh,
come down to the Bay Area, met me, and so in 80, late 88, started visiting up in Eugene for, you know, just visiting all of her friends. She basically had her second family up here,
mhm.
and thought it was beautiful up here, loved it. And we were dating in 89. In 89, there was this whole earthquake thing that happened.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I realized that the first thing that I thought about was, where was Jen? Is she okay? And this was long before cell phones. And
Oh,
I was with a friend at Candlestick Park trying to see the World Series game, which they
oh
canceled,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
and then spent, an epic journey getting back to my home, our place in Emeryville, to see if Jen was there. And
Emeryville. How'd you
yeah,
even get across the bay? Because wasn't the Bay Bridge like?
the Bay Bridge had part of the section of the Bay Bridge had
Yeah.
collapsed. So first we had to take a bus. My friend and I, who had gone to the game, uh, took a bus back to downtown San Francisco, which took like 2 hours because traffic was horrendous. Picked up my pickup truck I had parked downtown, and we had to get across the Golden Gate Bridge, and then across the San Rafael Bridge, and then to Emeryville, and then found out that she had left a message on our answering machine that she had stayed in the city,
Ah,
literally 3 blocks from where my truck had been parked. So I'd been like really right close
ah.
to her. Um, and then I took my friend home, and on the way we passed the Cypress structure in Oakland, which was a double
Oh
decker
yeah.
freeway that had collapsed, and that
Collapse.
that
Yeah.
was a yeah that was a very a person who worked for my mom had had perished in that
Wow.
collapse. But pretty much since the first person I thought of was Jen, I thought about it for a week. So a week after that earthquake, I proposed and we got married, and then when we were ready to like start going back up to Oregon, and said, yeah, it's a great place to raise kids. They don't seem to have earthquakes as much as they do down in California. And so moved up here we bought a house in 92, rented it out for a year, and then moved up in 93. So that's how I ended up in Oregon. And so from New York City to Oregon is a very interesting.
Yeah.
I still have to explain to old grade school friends where they go, wait, you're in Oregon, right? Like, yeah. Where is that exactly?
Is it
Um,
like that old video game Oregon Trail? It's
yeah,
like
Oregon
yeah,
Trail.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just
you
like
have
the
you have died of dysentery.
So did she ever go to Burning Man with you, or is she part of your
Yes.
whole? Yeah.
So when I first went to Burning Man in '94, our daughter, our oldest daughter, our first daughter, was a year and a half. And I remember asking, it's like, hey, Jen, I was thinking about going to this thing. Would it
It's
be
just
okay?
camping.
Yeah, well, it's camping, it's desert camping. But remember, okay, this was really new. And all of this information keeps saying, be careful, you might die out there. So I kind of we had a discussion. Is it okay for me to go away for the week? You'd be a whole, or the week. It was only going to be like 4 or 5 days. She said, sure. And then I came back, and even though it was early days, I think I got home at midnight. She had already been asleep. I wake her up, and I probably didn't let her go to sleep for about 2 hours, going, hey, and then this thing, and monument to impermanence, and this other thing happened, and then the man, and he
Like, that's
burned, and it was
nice, dear.
cool.
Go to bed.
Exactly. Um, so the thing was, so we then had our second daughter in '96, and by the time I'd gone, three times, and it was that thing where we weren't sure if we want to bring kids, and Jen, said, I don't want to. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable bringing the kids until I've been there myself. So it took 5 years. Yes, so in '99, the third year that I was running the communal kitchen, my mom took our daughters were old enough they could stay with my mom for for a week. And so Jen came in '99. That was her first time. Um, and the only challenge with that was by that year, the kitchen had kind of grown a lot bigger. So that year, for 5 days, we only did one meal a day. I didn't want everybody relying on our kitchen for every meal because like if I'm driving out at this point I had a rental truck and I'm driving this rental truck full of food, and if I crashed on the road on the way to Burning Man, I didn't want we're out here at Burning Man with no food. um, but she helped me run the kitchen. We fed 350 to 550 people brunch every day for 5 days.
Wow,
And
that's
that
a lot of work.
it's honestly it's the most work I think I've done in a week in my life,
Wow.
to date. And that was kind of like my Everest. I took a year off after that.
Yeah.
um,
Well, what was the first year that you saw kids on the playa?
Oh, I saw kids. Um, I don't think I saw kids my first year. Definitely saw them 95 and 96. Not a lot, but a few. And it was more like, a family camping together with one or two kids. I didn't see a lot. Um, and we took I took my daughter first went when she was 12, so it was 2005, and she had a great time. And then I took my younger daughter the next year, and they both had a great time. Um, hasn't stuck with them as much as it stuck with me. My eldest daughter's gone twice, but they have busy things and there's other stuff that they want to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that kind of brings us to the our last question is it's like what does it all mean to you? Why do you do this?
Why do
It's
I
like
do it?
or like what's the impact of this on your life? I mean how many years you've been doing this? You said like
30,
30?
30 years. 30
So is
years.
it like half your life?
Actually, I have to look at my calendar. I have it on my calendar. I think it is sometime later this year. It will be literally half my life that I will have been attending Burning Man. I I'll be 62. Oh God, I'm old. I'll be 62 next month. Um, and when I get to like the 31 and a half, or it's funny figuring out that juxtaposition of how
Yeah.
when. Um, well, so it's a funny thing. For years, especially when the term burner started going around, and also the stereotype of the burner. Oh, dude, no, Burning Man. You've really got to go to Burning Man. And I kept saying, no, 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 I'm not that burner. I just go. I just go. And there was a point, and the point really was in 2019, I actually got a day job at Burning Man. So while
You mean
most people,
your staff? Like is it like a year-round staff or
yes, year-round staff.
okay.
So, my background is in tech, well, restaurants and then tech. And in 2017, as happens in tech, the end of 2017, the company I'd worked for 23 years. I actually started at the company
Wow.
6 months before I went to my first Burning Man. And late 2017, they moved out of the area that I was in, and so I got laid off. But I had an opportunity through that layoff. I had a nice severance and an opportunity to go back to school. So I went back to school for a while, for 2 years, and got a machining and CNC programming
Oh,
degree
wow.
because I really was interested in being able to make things because of all my experience with the mutant vehicle owners. And then I was looking for a job, and Burning Man had a position managing internal tech support. And folks may not realize it, but there's a lot of tech that goes into managing Burning Man. Plus, everybody who works for Burning Man, the 100 to 150 people who work for Burning Man year round, all have computers and they need help with that. And that was right up my alley. So I started working for Burning Man. And my first day, you do an introduction. And I said, I've been doing DMV for 17 years. Or this many years, and I've been going for this many years. Um, and there's a point I've just come to realize that I used to say I'm not a burner. I'm just a guy who goes to Burning Man. But when I start counting up and realizing that I've been doing this every year, my volunteer work with the DMV sometimes takes up to 30 hours a week on top of my day job, whatever that's been. And I now work for the man. I gotta admit that, yeah, I am a burner. But the actual, the answer to your question of why do I still do this and why is it compelling to me is that for me, every year I see people come for the first time and I see their eyes get wide. I see them like process this world that's there, this environment, and I see it change them. And what I see, and we talked about this before, I shared my
Hmm.
Burning Man has its 10 principles, but for me, Burning Man, if I boil down what I appreciate about Burning Man, it comes down to three things. I call them three pillars. Do with that what you will. But those three things are awe, inspiration, and community. I see people go out there and awe and wonder. Wonder is a an experience that we're really in touch with when we're a kid. When you're a kid, a little kid is so much in touch with their wonder at the world. They will walk up to their parent with a rock in their hand, and they'll
Yeah.
go like, "Hey,
Look what I
Dad,
found.
look,
Yeah.
rock! No, no, look, rock! Wow, isn't this the coolest? It's rock, man! I'm keeping this rock forever. It's a rock!" And other things. Tree, wow, look at the bird, look at
Yeah.
whatever it is. Kids are so much because they're absorbing, they're learning, they're seeing the world with literally fresh eyes. But as we get older, not only in ourselves, but our society and the world starts teaching us to not show your emotion, not it becomes not be amazed at the world, it's be cool. Don't let them see you sweat. Don't show your feelings. Showing your feelings isn't cool. Showing that you're amazed by something isn't cool. And that translates into us, you know, acting like everything is just blasé. Um,
Dated. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, or just we don't do things that are awe-inspiring for ourselves. You know, actor age. There's so many things in our phrases in our lexicon that just say, don't do that. Don't
Yeah. Well, I
actor
haven't
age.
because ever since like we were talking about that, I was thinking about that, and kind of interesting kind of corollary to that is well, like people are who are kind of jaded. I mean, you can also be like you've been around, you've been experienced. It's like, oh, I've been going to Burning Man 30 years, I've seen everything, But then you see something you've never seen before, and then that it's just like, oh, I mean, I think even to someone who's like older, who's been around the block and has seen things, when you come, it's like that sense of awe, it's like something like, oh wow, wow, I haven't seen that before,
Yeah.
and especially like, we're talking about like tens of thousands of people like, expressing their creativity, and you come across something that's just like, it's like, well, I'm 54 years old, I've seen everything, and then you turn around the corner and you're like, oh my God, what is that?
Oh,
And then you start looking at it and you examine every detail and you're just
mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, I love how they welded this part. Like, oh, I
Yep.
never would have thought of that. And then it brings you to that second part, the inspiration, which is like, you know what? That gives me an idea. It made you
I'm getting so excited that I just knocked my headphones off.
But
Yes.
yeah, because I mean, to me, I mean, that's what's it's still for me kind of keeps drawing me back because it's like, oh yeah, yeah, been there, done that, scene. I mean, like you said, like it's part of the cool old time veteran burner. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so jaded, But like you see something and it sparks something, and you're like, you know what? That gives me an idea.
And for me, part of it is I look at the first timers that I see each year, and from them that helps remind me, especially if I get interrupted, because I'm working out there.
Hmm.
I am working all the time. In fact, my campmates, my camp now has a bar. We run a bar, and they often like go, "Hey, we've hardly seen you," because I'm either doing some tech stuff or I'm doing the DMV stuff, and I'm bouncing between the two. Um, but for me, um, it's it's seeing the impact it's having on these people who are like, wow. And I think it was my third or fourth year that I had this epiphany. I said, I know what what's being said in every car with a first timer as they're leaving the playa. Somebody in that car is saying, next year I'm gonna
Yeah,
dot
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 dot,
dot. Yeah.
whatever that is. And seeing that, and then over the years, seeing what people bring the next year, seeing how people show up is just, it's inspiring to me. And the last piece of that is those same people who go, they get gobsmacked at something they experience at Burning Man. And they get gobsmacked, and part of it is that's I feel is mostly unique to Burning Man is they're seeing so much creativity, and they're seeing that it's being done not by professionals, but by other people just like them. Other people just like them got and usually got together with other people.
Yeah.
It's a group, and like, we made this thing. We made this cool thing, and we made it as cool as we could. We made a giant version of the game of Mousetrap.
Oh, I remember
We made a homemade roller coaster.
that.
We made or something smaller. We just made a cool environment for you to come in. One of my favorite early Burning Mans, I think it was 97. I can't remember if it was 97 or 8, but these folks had a barbershop. It was a barbershop beauty salon. It was right on the Esplanade, and it was the whole backdrop of a barbershop with the mirrors and the sinks and everything, and two classic barber chairs. And they had a man and a woman at certain times of the day.
Uh-huh.
They had a guy in a white, perfect white, like 1958 barber uniform, thick back hair, combs in the pocket, and a barber chair. And then a woman with the other barber chair in a beehive in an outfit looking like a 1960s, from a hairdresser. And they had these two huge wheel of fortunes. And instead of numbers or dollar signs, at each section was a drawing of a haircut. Like the men was like the executive, the mohawk, the pompadour, whatever. And they had this whole shtick where they would announce, and ladies and gentlemen, if you step right up to the Wheel of Fortune and spin the Wheel of Fortune, we will give you the haircut that you land on. And it was all performance art, but they did it. And they
Yeah.
literally had people go up, spin the wheel, and sit down, and they would do this patter while they gave them a haircut or a hairdo
Wow.
on the open playa. This wasn't enclosed. This was just like, and it was brilliant and amazing. And like, who thinks of this? But that's the kind of thing that it's unlike most large events. You think about the large events you go to, it is a one to many proposition. If it's a concert, it's whoever's on stage, and everybody else is a
Spectator.
passive, yeah, spectator. Yes, it is a, even if it's a football game, whatever. It's a one to many proposition, and this is a many to many proposition. People come, and it's not one theme. I mean, yes, we have a theme, but it's not one person's idea of what to create and what to share. It's 80,000 people's idea. And so that every year, inspires me. And the fact that communities continue to be built around people's experiences there, it inspires people. And that's the inspiration. So, awe and wonder, inspiration, community. As long as those things are part of Burning Man, the other things, and yeah, there's things that aren't great. And yeah, we could talk, and we're not gonna,
Yeah, we're
about
not gonna do it.
all the complaints that people have of this thing or
Save
another.
that for
But
social media. Yeah.
as long as Burning Man continues to provide a an environment that inspires people, that helps people get back in touch with their sense of wonder, that inspires people to build community, it will be compelling to me. And the last thing I'll say, you know, I I do take part in a theme camp that we have a little bar, the Swiss Space Bar. Come by, get a
Hmm.
gargle blaster drink.
Wow.
Um, but you know, my contribution over the years, I feel hasn't been, the doing the art, but it's been the facilitating of the art.
Very important. Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, they say, "What's your best experience at Burning Man?" I will tell you, every year, it'll be the second night that the DMV is open, and I will go up on we have a little platform on top of the DMV office, and I will look at the line of cars and with all their lights, and I look at all of the different things that these people have created, and I am awestruck and so grateful. And I mean, right now I'm getting emotional talking about it because it's going, in whatever little way, I helped this happen. I helped this amazing kaleidoscope of creativity come to this place, and all these people sharing their creations with all of these other folks in Black Rock City. For me, that's what keeps me coming back.
Well, facilitating, helping someone else to radically express themselves, that's a gift.
So,
That's your gift giving back to other. I mean, like, it might be kind of an unsung kind of hero thing. People don't think about it too much. It's like, you're just some bureaucrat pushing papers, but it's like, no, like you said, like you're helping other people to express themselves. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Wow. So let me go in now. Ooh. So yeah, any final words or let's see, if you want anyone to reach you, is any way you want to give people? I mean, don't just blurt out your phone number, but
Well, I do have, if you're interested in, I do have, not every year, but 30 years of photographs from Burning Man on my website at chefjuke.com. Chef Juke, all one word. Uh, Folks can, and my contact info is there. So if you folks can
awesome. And
feel,
then what? Well, one final question I
yeah.
just remembered. Have you built any art cars?
I have helped other people build art cars. So I mentioned earlier that I went back to school and got a machining degree.
Yeah.
In 10 years ago, I said, gosh, I've been doing this DMV stuff for a while now. I should really build my own mutant vehicle, and I have the design for what I want to build. I mean, I have the inspiration image.
Hmm.
And I said, wow, but I've done some woodworking, but I really don't really think I have the skills to do that. And what I said is also I need to build a shop.
Mm.
Well, what happened was I built the shop, and the shop became the project. And I haven't gotten to the mutant vehicle yet, but I now have in my two-car garage a little community makerspace. It's that I share with about 30 people who all chip in a few bucks a month. And in fact, right now, as we speak, I have two people down there working on I think it's a light bar for their off-road vehicle. But I share my shop with, again, about 30 people when they want to work on things and help people out. I refurbish old tools and stuff. But I have most of the parts. I have a motor. I have some wheels. I have some suspension parts.
Your
I
chassis?
just I haven't got the chassis is what I have to build. So I'm closing in on that. My biggest challenge is my ADD. I keep getting other small projects that get in the way of things.
Mm.
But my shop, I have a plasma cutter. I've got welders. I've got a water jet. I've got a whole bunch of. I've got enough tools
Ah.
to build a battleship. It's just a matter of the time and focus to actually clear the decks and build it. So we'll see. Maybe not this year, but we'll aim for next year.
So let me guess, a giant jukebox with a chef's hat.
No,
Two on the nose.
no, it is a two-seater retro flying the jet car.
Oh, like Jetsons kind of thing?
Uh, think more Flash Gordon,
Oh,
more Flash Gordon-y, like old school kind of Art Deco. Yeah, I'll send you a pic of my
yeah.
inspiration
It's
image.
kind of
You'll
like when you
see.
drive along, be like, wow, God, I had that song go, Flash,
Yes. Oh yeah.
savior of the universe.
You got it right. So we'll see. Coming to the playa someday, hopefully
Yeah.
soon.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And maybe we'll have you on again for another episode.
So, it'd be a pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show, please subscribe, rate, and review it on Apple Podcasts. It just helps to get this show seen. Please tell a friend and help to spread the word. If there's enough support, we can do a lot more of these shows and publish more shows per month. If you would like to contact us about being a guest, what you think about the show, or whatever, please send an email to shadowofthemanpodcast, that's all one word, at gmail.com. You can also follow Shadow of the Man on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. The links for these pages are all available on the front page of shadowoftheman, all one word, .com. See you next month for a new episode of The Shadow of the Man.
Thank you for listening to this latest show. We have to make another one, so gotta go. Don't worry, for next month we already have one in the can. Very soon you'll be listening to a new Shadow of the Man.